Hey everybody, thank you for watching. My name is Dylan, and my presentation is on fitness for the deaf and hard of hearing. Now to start, what does it mean to be deaf or hard of hearing? Well, a hearing impairment is a result of an structural abnormality or any damage to the nerves which transmit sound. There are two types of hearing impairment. There's congenital, meaning it was present at birth, and adventitious, meaning it occurs randomly. How hearing loss occurs? Well, according to the National Institute of Health, there's a multitude of reasons. The first being age-related. This is loss of hearing that it gradually occurs as we grow older. Many of us may unfortunately experience this as we age. If you were born with it, it's usually due to some sort of abnormality within the ear. Another reason is noise-induced hearing loss. This is any long-term exposure to sounds that are too loud or last too long. This can damage sensory hair cells. Key fact here is that these do not grow back, so once we lose them, fortunately, we lose them. Other reasons would be conditions such as high blood pressure and diabetes, and medications that are toxic to these sensory cells. Like, for example, here, chemotherapy for a cancer patient. There are a number of degrees of hearing impairment. The first two being deaf and hard of hearing. Deaf is severe or profound hearing impairment, and hard of hearing, which is mild to moderate. Now, this is different from deaf because a person who is hard of hearing prefers speech as their form of communication, as opposed to deaf, which deaf individuals prefer sign language. To finish up the slide here, there's slight to profound, which is all based on hearing ability. So decibel loss, you'll see here 25 to 40 is slight, all the way to greater than 90 decibels loss, which is profound. Some other hearing loss facts. Hearing loss is the most common disability in the U.S. 3 in 10 Americans and 3 children per 100 have significant hearing loss. Portions of deafness as compared to those who are hard of hearing, which I may call HOH later in this presentation, just so you know. Proportion is less than 1%. Now, the flip side of this is that the proportion of individuals with HOH has been growing rapidly. 12.5% of U.S. children between ages of 6 and 19 are estimated to have hearing loss in either one or both ears. This is also attributed to the growing number of older adults within our population. Stating here 1 in 3 U.S. people between ages 65 and 74, and nearly half of those that are older than 75 years of age have some form of hearing loss. Now, how does this affect an individual's physical activity, ADLs, or exercise? Generally speaking, this does not have any effect on the exercise response, since there are no true physical limitations. However, due to the nature of hearing impairments, balance problems can occur. This could limit motor skill performance, and it's been noted that static and dynamic imbalance can occur much more frequently within deaf children as opposed to their non-deaf counterparts. Proof of impacted motor skill performance, to put some emphasis on this point, Dr. Stephen Butterfield, between ages 6 and 91, published extensively on gross motor profiles. He evaluated a mix of children between the ages of 3 and 14, having them perform a wide range of motor skills. His findings, quoted here, indicated delayed development of catching, kicking, jumping, and hopping skills in deaf children as compared to non-disabled youth. Now, it's important to note, this doesn't mean that their motor skill development is in any way, shape, or form impacted. Two separate things between motor skill performance and development. They can still develop new skills. It's just going to take increased practice in order to develop those skills. Now, some benefits of exercise for this population. Regular exercise produces all the same benefits. Most notably, however, is improvements in balance and spatial orientation. Just due to the nature of hearing impairment, there's always some form of balance issue or an issue with spatial orientation. And other benefits specific to this population is improved socialization skills, communication proficiency, and confidence for the client. Special considerations I'm going to go over, first being hearing aids, and then necessary modifications. It's going to be two separate parts, testing and exercise. Now to start, types of hearing aids. There are four main types of hearing aids that are used typically. There's behind the ear, which is kind of like the hooked headphones that you may wear to listen to your music. There's also a mini version of that, which is more streamlined, a little slicker. There's an in the ear, which kind of sits on the outer part of the ear, or in the canal, which is just completely inside the ear canal. You can see an image of each of these here on the side, and on top of the slide is a picture of what's called a cochlear implant. It's a type of aid that has internal and external parts. It also includes a microphone, which processes the sound and then transmits them to the internal parts of the aid. Now, why is it important for us to understand the different types of hearing aids? Key thing here, hearing aids amplify sounds. So this can make background noise distracting for the individual. For this reason, it may be worth it to talk with your clients as a professional, determine if you need to alter the location of their training, whether it be a private room or somewhere away from the greater population. Also, these type of hearing aids can typically be damaged from excessive sweat during training. This would be more for hearing aids, not the cochlear implant. But if it's possible, determine whether your client's comfortable taking off their hearing aid during their training sessions with you. Now, necessary modifications. Again, we're starting off with safety for testing. We need to be aware of potential balance problems and poor spatial orientation due to them having a hearing impairment, issues within the ear that puts them at a risk of falling. So avoiding anything with treadmills, bikes, or anything that needs excessive balance, those tests, take them out. Important one here, communication barriers. Having an interpreter nearby would be helpful for a deaf client, especially since they rely on sign language and you may not know that. Being able to use pictures or videos may be necessary, and for those who are hard of hearing and are accustomed to speech, make sure you are face to face with them so that they can also read your lips to further understand what you are saying out loud to them. When it comes to testing, allow them time to practice before you take test results. Due to stigmas, people in this population may not have had the same opportunities for normal childhood play, which would lead them to not be able to develop certain motor skills. Have an interpreter there for screening procedures, especially when working through paperwork and the Part Q. Individuals with disabilities may need extra clarification for comprehension purposes. And again, hearing aids, you're going to see this multiple times. They may need to perform their tests within a private room to avoid any ambient noises from distracting them. Now, safety for exercise training. Again, communication is key. Having an interpreter there for deaf clients would be extremely helpful to avoid any kind of communication issues. And again, for those accustomed to speech, be face to face with them. Look them in the eyes when you communicate with them. Demonstrate, demonstrate, demonstrate. Perform any task from start to finish. Many in this population are visual learners. So the use of visual clues will be very helpful as well. Having pictures, videos, maybe some image flashcards. Allow time for practice. Again, allowing them to role play the motor movements before they actually do the exercises. Again, it's important about hearing aids. May need to do their exercise training in a separate room, and remove any unnecessary equipment. Again, with the spatial orientation and balance problems, if it's not necessary or not needed for the training session, just keep it out of the area. Additional considerations I thought were important Again, maintain eye contact. Even with an interpreter there in the room, maintain eye contact and talk directly to your client. It will help make them feel more comfortable when working with you. Use normal facial expressions. Don't overly smile, overly exaggerate any kind of expressions you may be using. Two things I thought were cool. One being allow the client to mimic you. Especially for a deaf client, it may be the best way for them to understand the task that you are asking them to perform. And second, correct errors by making errors. You demonstrate the wrong way to perform a task while shaking your head politely, then perform the task correctly while nodding your head affirmatively. May be the difference between them performing it properly or improperly. If possible, learn basic sign language, especially for instructional and assessment purposes, and always confirm with the client. Always ask them, do you understand? Make sure you and the client are on the same page. An important distinction I thought was worth adding here for this presentation, deaf is used by individuals who identify with the deaf culture. They use sign language as their primary means of communication. Most people who are hard of hearing, however, have already been accustomed to speech, talking, using the spoken word, and they still use it as a means of communications most of the time. So you should as well. Now, for the case study, let's meet Greg. Greg's a 34-year-old man who has been deaf since birth. He also has hypertension with a resting blood pressure of 143/87, takes beta blocker, and prefers sign language as his form of communication. It's important to note that there, because then we can work on having an interpreter present during our sessions. He has been cleared by his primary doctor for exercise, and his goal is to be able to compete in a mud run within a year. Now, some considerations for Greg. Medication. Since he has hypertension, it's important that we communicate to him that he needs to take his medications as recommended. Due to his medications, he'll need to have extended cool-down sessions after each training session. When it comes to aerobic testing, again, this is a population that's at fall risk. He's in this population, no testing on a treadmill or a bike. So mile run, 12-minute walk-run test would be more than appropriate. Resistance testing, body weight tests such as push-up, pull-up, sit-up would be more than enough to get a baseline of his strength. And they also do not require a huge amount of explanation, so it would be the easiest form of testing to do with Greg. Flexibility, sit and reach test, overhead squats would be good to gain a sense of Greg's total flexibility. Communication is a specific consideration for Greg and those in the deaf population. Since he's completely deaf, he uses sign. If the trainer does not know sign, having an interpreter present will help avoid communication errors. Visual cues and flashcards should be ready, and make sure you demonstrate each test and exercise for Greg. He's a visible learner. Allow him time to mimic your actions. Now, since the deaf and hard of hearing communities do not require a specialized fit recommendation, for Greg, we're going to follow the hypertension fit recommendations. So for aerobic training, he should perform aerobic exercises 5 days a week to start, at least 30 minutes about. As the program progresses, he can work his way up to 7 days a week while increasing the amount of time he spends. He should perform this type of training based on an explained RPE scale, somewhere between 12 and 13. Type of aerobic training he should do would be walking or running on a track or a course, again avoiding treadmills. For resistance training, should be performed 2 days a week at 3 sets of 10 reps per exercise. After a couple weeks, you can add an additional day. Now, weight should start light, gradually increase the weight as he becomes comfortable, and is able to show that he can perform higher weighted tasks. It's recommended that he starts on a body weight training program to learn basic movements. As time goes on and he gets comfortable, Greg can begin to learn how to use machines and free weights. And then finally, with flexibility, should be tasked with flexibility training 3 days a week, especially on resistance training days. Start with static stretching, 3 sets of 15 seconds. Once his skills improved, move him on to dynamic stretching, 2 sets of 10 reps per exercise. and he should be instructed to perform these stretches until he feels some tightness or slight discomfort. That's everything. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing your feedback.